more minutes to make their way. The attrition effect as the day goes on. Just doing introductions, and then as folks come in and finish from there. Well, hello to everyone. Glad to see you here. We are going to just start off by introducing ourselves, and would love to hear from everyone your name and where you work and what your role is in your school. So I'm Allison Dornberg. I'm at Rye Country Day School in Rye, New York. In Westchester County. I'm the Director of Public Purpose.
My name is Rachel Klein. I am the Director of Service Learning at Rivervale Country School, which is located not too far from Rye Country Day in the Bronx, New York, very just north of Manhattan. Yeah. And then.
And Jim Valengie, I'm a teacher at William Penn Charter School, which is a Friends School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I run the Public Purpose Center, Service Learning, and also teach in the Religion Department. Teach service learning courses in the Religion Department as well.
So if we go around maybe and just introduce yourselves.
Jason Heiser, and I'm the head of schools for Crossroads College Preparatory School in the city of St. Louis, Missouri.
I'm Alethea White. I work at the Meadowbrook School of Weston. I'm the Director of Community Partnerships. I teach an English section in 7th grade, and I do social justice programs for CLE.
I'm Becky Pfeiffer. I teach at the Murray School in Washington, D.C. I'm the service learning coordinator for K through 8 and also a Spanish teacher.
I'm Keith Jordan. I'm at Harvard Westlake Middle School in Los Angeles. I'm one of our community service coordinators, and I teach student leadership and student government.
Andrea Gallagher, I teach at Milton Academy History and the Social Justice course, and I direct the community service program.
I'm Dave Sykes. I teach at the Hackley School, which is very close to where you teach in Westchester, New York. I'm a history teacher, an economics teacher, and a dean. And my school is actually thinking of doing an Aspire type program, and that's why I'm here.
I'm Jose Malgoza, Polytechnic School in Pasadena, California, and I'm a history teacher there. And during the summer, I run a program, Partnership for Success.
Hi, I'm from Henry School in Oakland, California, and I work with the Heads Up program, and I'm also one of the co-directors of PSPP.
I'm Dave Cutler. I teach history, features journalism and government at a small private school outside Boston. And I've been really interested in this kind of work, and I do some reporting on it for different publications.
Fantastic. Welcome. So in terms of what lies ahead for the next hour, I think a lot of us in our roles doing public purpose and service learning and social justice work are maybe the only person or one of a very small team within our schools doing this work, and yet we are constantly bringing together different stakeholders as part of the work we do. So we are going to share with you 3 different models of how our schools use committees and consortium work to connect different stakeholders, students, faculty, and partner organizations. And we also want to have a discussion and learn more about what you're doing at your schools and how we can share our ideas with each other. So each of us is going to talk a little bit about our program, and then we will open it up for a conversation from there. And Jim is going to start us off.
All right, a little bit about my school. First of all, it's a Friends School charter. It's not a charter school, founded in 1689. There were no public or private schools in the city of Philadelphia when we were founded. William Penn actually gave a series of 13 schools to the city to be able to provide civic education. It's a form of civic responsibility even at that time. And we're a great believer. We have partnerships with 14 different schools in the city we're a great believer that education is a civil rights issue of today that literally will survive in the future, despite the fact we've been there for all those years, only if our public school partners survive and the city thrives. And that's a big issue in the city of Philadelphia, where education, I'm sure many of you come from urban areas and rural areas too, but it's a big issue in the city of Philadelphia because there's a war on literally between the charter schools and the neighborhood public schools. So we intentionally work only in the 5 poorest and most marginalized zip codes in programs that have no programming. We only go to schools where there's very little programming. Nobody's come in there with a fancy STEAM program or done anything else. We even at times will work with organizations. We started this year working with a group called the Center for Returning Citizens, which is prisoners being integrated back into society, and they have a storefront on Germantown Avenue, which is a big thoroughfare that runs north and south in our city, and literally had never had a program of any kind before when we went in there. So we search out those kind of programs because we think that goes back to what William Penn was talking about, the ideals that he was talking about at that time. So we're very intentional about that. In our Public Purpose Center, we work with education, poverty, and food insecurity, and only those 3 issues. So when the well-meaning kid comes up and says, well, I want to do a fundraising drive for X, and my parents really care about it, and we think the whole school should be devoted to this, we're very polite, and sometimes we'll do those kind of things, but we keep going back to, this is what the school is about, education, poverty, and food insecurity, and this is what we're going to stress and work on. So we make a real point of that. And I teach a lot of courses related to that. I teach, for instance, a poverty seminar right now. I do an urban issues education course in the winter. I do peace, justice, and social change in the fall, which is about the school to prison pipeline, and then a philanthropy 101 course in the summer. And all of those courses are connected to the same area I'm going to talk about and the kind of work we're doing at that time. And I'll be glad to send you the information on the courses as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this consortium that we're a part of. And what we decided is we're so frustrated about these issues of education and what's happening in the city, and so tired of the same kind of things over and over and over, that could we do something ourselves with partner schools in the neighborhood and work together to try to lift the entire neighborhood up. Let me just give you an example of Philadelphia. The other day, the school superintendent said, and I wrote this down, I want to make sure I get this right, that if he can only get $77 million from the state, he'll put a nurse and a counselor in every school next year. That's how bad it is. We've had kids die from asthma attacks in schools this year because there was no nurse there. And this is in a state of Pennsylvania where there isn't even a budget for this year. The school district is spending money just based on a temporary grant from the state, and they haven't even passed this year's budget, much less next year's budget. Just crazy. So we decided, could we go out and find, and some of these schools we've been working with for a while, but could we find every school in the neighborhood and work together with them professionally and try to lift the whole neighborhood up. So you'll see what we call it is an Allegheny West Consortium. Allegheny West is an area of our city that 80 or 90 years ago was the showplace of the world. There were textile factories, hat factories. It was thriving. People lived in row houses and could literally just walk to work. Now it's become a really hard-pressed neighborhood. The first company to leave was the Budd Company, you may never have heard of, B-U-D-D, which manufactured car parts and tanks and everything. Well, they left in '65. Then Tasty Cake, I don't know if you know Tasty Cake. Tasty Cake left and was bought out by another baker and moved down by the river. And their plant is sitting there rotting today. And then sadly in this past week, Pep Boys, you may have heard of Pep Boys, the financier Carl Icahn bought Pep Boys, is merging it with Auto Plus, and now he's told every executive that's right in that neighborhood they're going to have to leave too and move out of town. So it literally is hard-pressed at all times. The city's trying to respond to that and do something, but it's been really tough. So you'll see the schools we have up there. I'm just going to read them out to you. We have 3 neighborhood public schools, one of which just got put on the watch list, which is going to require intervention by the school district, which means half the teachers get fired, they try to reorganize and do all of these things. Another is a school that we literally went to the, testified several times before the School Reform Commission in the city and saved. And we're able to keep them alive. And another is another local school. We've got one street school, 2 independent schools, which would be Penn Charter, and then St. James, which is an independent Episcopalian school we helped start about a half-mile away, which is now 5 through 8, had their first graduating class last year. That school is only for poor and marginalized kids in the neighborhood. A middle-class kid could not enter that school. It's meant to serve the neighborhood. And to show you again the kind of relationships, we get a lot of counseling money from the state. This year we gave St. James $250,000 of counseling money we get from the state because we don't need it, and they were able to hire a social worker, a counselor, etc. It's kind of consortium work that we've done. One street school, which is a Cambodian-American street school that literally 2 people formed in their house, and is still in their house, and one across the street that is in no known association or anything. So they have no real mentors or teachers they can call on. So to them, it's a big deal being a part of this. One charter school, we don't discriminate against the charter schools. So we picked a Wissahickon Charter School and Ecological Charter School right near us. Well, maybe we do a little bit. And then 2 universities. So Philadelphia University is what used to be called Philadelphia Textile, right across the street from us, and then Temple University. Temple University has moved from Broad Street, another major north-south artery in our city, all the way out towards where we are. So they're a major part of this. And we don't work with the education department. We work with the school and community collaborative, which actually works with kids in the neighborhoods in various programs. So that's a little bit different. We're very intentional about this. We studied and mapped the community before we started this. We're trying to bring a diverse set of schools together to develop and share the foundational knowledge, skills, programs, and practices that will allow all students to become successful in learning. So again, I don't want to skip over the committee because that's what really our workshop is about. I don't want to go on and on about this. So we do have 2 teachers from each school that run this consortium together, and they are the stakeholders in our community. We also have a neighborhood development corporation, like a CDC, that pitches in as well. We meet 3 times a year at various partner schools. That we started this whole thing 4 years ago by literally getting on a bus on a 100-degree day, piling everybody on, and going to each school, one after the other. A lot of the people had never been to parts of the city that are literally in about a 5 square mile area. It was pretty incredible at the time. We also are on an intranet site called the School Collective where teachers can communicate with each other. So a 2nd grade teacher at that street school can write up in charter 2nd grade teacher and say, what are you doing? I need a lesson plan for this week in X, and they can collaborate together that way. And that's been pretty successful, the fact that they can communicate in addition to the meetings as well. And then I go back to that thought again too. We really try to cultivate in this group the idea that we're all in this together. That sometimes they don't believe it, the idea that they think of the rich and well-resourced schools. You can't really care about what we do in the next 5 to 10 years, but we do. I even sometimes, the head of school goes crazy. I portray Penn Charter 20 years as this sort of armed camp with barbed wire around the building, and we're busing all the kids in from 20, 30 miles away in the suburbs. And that's the way it is. And really, that's my vision of what could happen unless schools work collectively together and try to care about each other's success in the future from there. So I'll show you what we think are successes and where this has been tough to implement at the same time. We do professional development. And again, there's no money behind this. I went to this wonderful presentation yesterday on the Western New York Collective in Buffalo, where they've got great foundation grants and everything else. Our intention from the beginning was to say, we don't really know each other well enough in our schools to go out and start applying for money from foundations and trumpeting how much money we got. We thought that'd be great, but unless we really know what we're trying to accomplish, we'd get a grant, it'd expire in 5 years, we'd say, oh, what wonderful work we did, when who knows whether we did that at all. So we've been slow to really do that. But most of what we do is professional development. Teachers in the classroom, whether it's project-based learning, responsive classroom, character development, service learning integration. We poll the teachers, and we do a lot of metrics on this to see what they want, and then decide to do it. We even had, most of you aren't old enough to know who he is, but you might, Bill Ayers, who's a former education professor, still emeritus at the University of Chicago, who was one of the weathermen in the 1960s, who went around blowing up explosives all over the country, and the late 60s, early 70s. Even that created a little ripple in my friend's school when I told people Bill Ayers was coming. Because during the first Obama campaign, Sarah Palin used him as that Obama palled around with terrorists. And that was the terrorist she was talking about because he lived right down the street from Obama in Chicago. But made a big deal out of that too at the same time. We take our STEAM work on our back. I know STEAM is the big thing these days, etc. But we literally put it on our back. We hired a local nonprofit agency, and she trains interns at our school and at the other schools, and they take it out to the Allegheny West Consortium schools and community centers. We figure then we've got much more impact if we go 3 miles do the program in a community center, because then those kids are coming from catchment schools in the neighborhood, and we got this beautiful maker space, everything's great, but we want to get out of our school and get it out into the neighborhood and impact kids that way. Doesn't mean we don't use our maker space and bring kids in, we do, but we've been seen as sort of a model for, and again, we're pretty agnostic in terms of funding and all that. It's been seen as a model for this big Philadelphia school group that raises a lot of money from outsiders. They've followed us around. We've had the School Reform Commission follow us around, et cetera. So we're not adverse to that, but at the same time, we're proceeding very slowly. And then we think this way we increase efficiency of ideas across schools, we share stories, we build relationships, et cetera. So in that sense, we've been very optimistic about the work we've done. Now I'll show you the downside quickly. So the downside, the turnover in school personnel. This group we have of about 16 teachers, professors, et cetera, for the various schools. One principal can leave a school and literally you feel like you're back at ground zero. This Taylor School, Bayer Taylor School we've been working with, it was almost closed by the school district. We had worked with for decades. We have teachers take their classes there during the day. We have blocks of time during the day so we can get out and service learning classes. And literally the principal changed and retired, and all of a sudden the new principal says to me, tell me about the relationship between Penn Charter and Taylor School. And I'm saying to myself, oh no, this is built on such a long legacy. Also, key teachers can be change agents in schools, so if they leave, that really can stall things, and you have to really work to get that back again. The composition of that committee that we put together to run this is really critical. We still question ourselves. We try to do metrics on what we're doing. We poll the teachers all the time to say, are we really improving teacher practice, or are we simply connecting and inspiring teachers? Nothing wrong with that. If we're connecting and inspiring teachers, that's great. But are we really improving teacher practice, whether it's through the internet, whether it's through the meetings, etc.? We often let the neighborhood school teachers run those workshops because the assumption always is, oh, these people from Temple or the private schools, they must know how to run these workshops. Almost 75% of the workshops are run by teachers in neighborhood public schools, which again, the city, my political opinion is the city's trying to get rid of too at the same time. One other quick thing, we also connect people in the neighborhood. We had a parent do a TEDx talk for us 3 years ago who runs this chain of grocery stores in the city, and he started to get the idea, not just from the talk, but could, in a food desert, which this area is, could he put a grocery store in there and pull the community at the same time and build a grocery store, which now is a thriving grocery store, shopping center, etc. One little note, if that hadn't happened, Donald Trump 5 years ago had applied to build a casino there in the same spot. I often reflect on what would have happened if that Trump casino went in there instead of that grocery store. That's such a great neighborhood resource, but luckily the city turned that down, put them all down by the waterfront instead. So we question that all the time, question ourselves too. And then the teacher programming is great, but the student programming is tough. To try to combine schools of this different ilk and to get student programming when all of a sudden the teacher from one of the neighborhood public schools will call me and say, I don't have a bus, it's Saturday morning, how am I going to get those kids over to your school? We get a lot of situations like that we really, service, I always say, is service learning is 90% logistics. So the logistics of setting all this up is so complicated. So we do a lot of student programs, they do plays together, that kind of thing, but that is tough, no question about it. All right, I'll stop there. I'll be glad to answer any questions later.
Great. All right. So I will start off by just telling you a little bit about Rye Country Day. We are located, as I said, in Westchester County, right outside of New York City. We are a pre-K through 12 school. We've been around for quite a while, since 1869, and service is part of the history of the school, going all the way back. Our motto is not for self, but for service, which, as we have shifted to a public purpose approach where the self and reflection and considering one's own role in the community is very integral to the experience of doing any kind of public purpose work. It raises a lot of questions about what that actually means for us, but we'll save that for another time. Back in 2009, we began the transition from a more traditional community service model to a public purpose approach. We had an external organization come in and do an audit of our programs. We spent 2 years really doing our own evaluation of our own our own work in the community and have built this public purpose program, which continues to evolve today. I think this was a really large transformation for our school. Our approach to service had been typically around fundraising. It was almost always something that happened outside the classroom, or if it happened during class time, it was sort of an add-on to the actual work of the curriculum. It was something that you took a break to do rather than having it be integrated into the curriculum. So this shift has taken a while for our faculty, and I think the first step in that transition was developing a clear understanding among faculty of what does public purpose mean, why is this important, and what might this look like in your teaching practice. The goal within our public purpose approach, as I think it probably is in many of your schools as well, is around building substantial multi-year partnerships where there's mutual benefit and that service is not a one-way transaction. So in 2013, we began a faculty public purpose committee at school, and this is a group of about 15 to 20 faculty members representing all three divisions, lower, middle, and upper schools. It's voluntary. People choose to participate because it's something that they want to do. The faculty who are on the committee represent most academic departments, not every single one, but it's a pretty broad range of teachers. We meet about 6 times during the year, so roughly once a month, taking a break for sort of the busy times around exams and as we approach break in December and things like that. And our meetings are structured around these peer collaborative groups, and I'm gonna pass these handouts around that explain what these groups look like for us. So have any of you done Critical Friends groups in your schools? Yes, a few, great. So this will look very familiar to you. This is an adaptation of a Critical Friends model that we've shifted to meet our needs both curricularly and in terms of time, space, and so forth. So these groups each have 4 to 5 faculty members in them. Faculty can request whether they want to be in a group with other teachers from their division or whether they want to be in a cross-divisional group, and we've had success with both of those. We've had an upper school specific, I think just had upper school specific groups actually, and then the others have included teachers from a range of divisions, which is great. You get a completely different perspective, and I think teachers are asked to clarify things that they just take as a given that everyone understands. When someone who teaches 2nd grade is talking to someone who teaches seniors, they may not share all of the same language. And the groups are really an opportunity for faculty at any stage in the development of a project to get feedback from their peers. So faculty are encouraged to bring projects for peer feedback that either they are thinking about getting started or are in the planning phases and they want some guidance from the other members of their group on how to shape that project as they prepare to roll it out. Other faculty are midstream on a project and are just kind of fine-tuning as they move forward. Others have just finished a project and either it was successful or it wasn't, or most likely it was some of both, and they're getting some feedback as they prepare to bring it into its next incarnation, whatever that might look like. These groups have not, our faculty committee originally started off with a broader focus. In its first year, we had discussions of articles, we brought in guest speakers, we had students present work that they were doing, faculty present work that they were doing. We do a lot of interactive activities, we use a lot of Post-its, there's a lot of movement in the room. And a lot of the original work of the faculty committee that led to the creation of these groups was around developing a common understanding of what public purpose meant. We reached a point where it started to feel like most of the teachers in this committee, which is not representative of the entire school, these are the people who are choosing to be in the room and dedicate their time to this. But we reached a point where I think most of the teachers theoretically understood the philosophical underpinnings of this approach. And then the groups came about because I noticed that there was a gap in how that theoretical understanding translated into actual curricular work in the classroom. And so, okay, I know what public purpose means, I understand why it's important, but how do I actually make that happen? And so this is a way that faculty can actually take ideas for curriculum in their classroom and guide them through a process to bring them into reality. And so the handout kind of outlines what the protocol looks like. It's a very structured protocol. It is within the individual groups carried out to very varying degrees of its actual structure. The idea, and it's fine, it works for the different people who are in the groups. One of the hardest parts of this sequence of types of questions and types of discussion is that there's a moment where the person who is presenting the project steps back and lets the other people in the group have a conversation about their project while they listen and take notes, and that's extremely challenging for some of our faculty members, so that doesn't always work out exactly in that way, but when it does, it's actually a very powerful learning experience. The idea is that the groups meet throughout the year, and at each meeting, one faculty member is presenting their project, and that they come in with a key question for the group, and that's really important. It's not just sort of, here's my project, and what do you think of it, but a really directed question of, where is my next step, and how can you help me to get there? Does anyone have questions about any of the different steps on the sheet? So in terms of what this has looked like for us, one of the biggest successes, I think, has just been the fact of creating time and space to have these conversations. Our school is very fast-paced. There's a lot happening. We don't always slow down to sit in a small group and talk with each other about curricular work, and so having our meetings are 90 minutes, they're on Thursdays after school. Having that space just to have these conversations, I think, has been a really successful aspect of the committee's work. I think that we have had success in helping make that conceptual leap from an understanding to an actual curricular practice. And there have been some really wonderful projects that have come out of these groups. We have a photography class that has a partnership with an organization called Furniture Share House, which is a furniture bank for individuals and families transitioning into permanent housing for one reason or another. Either they are coming out of incarceration, military, homelessness, and it's a huge warehouse with donated furniture, and through social service agencies, families can come and furnish their new home. And so our photography class has started supplying framed photographs from the students so that when people are starting off in their new homes, they can have original artwork to hang. And it was an idea that was a great idea in its inception. The photography teacher brought it to her group, and there were a couple of really nice elements that came out of that conversation. One of which was having the students write sort of a statement about why they chose that particular photograph, what it means to them, what they're hoping it might mean to someone else. And there's a little statement on the back of it so that someone getting it can read a little bit about it. One of the ideas that came up in the group also was to have a blank postcard with a stamp on it that goes in the back that says at the top, how do you like your new photograph? It's addressed back to the art department at Rye Country Day. And so a number of these postcards have come back with people talking about their appreciation for having this art in their home. And even though the nature of this partnership, the students don't have an ongoing relationship with the individual family or person who got the print, they don't know who it was. It creates a sense of humanity, I think, in the experience. It's not just dropping off a box of photographs. So that's one example of a successful project. We also, some of the other, just to give you a couple other examples, we have an upper school physics class that built doll houses with electrical wiring. The students use their knowledge of circuitry to wire these doll houses, so you can turn on the lights, you can turn on like a ceiling fan, and they brought them to a school in Yonkers, in a very under-resourced area, that the physics teacher had a relationship through her church with a teacher at the school. They had started talking about it, and she came to realize that the students at this school had none of this kind of innovative STEM work. So the physics students brought the dollhouses to the school. They taught a brief second grade appropriate lesson on wiring and circuitry, and donated the dollhouses so that students in the school there could use them. And that project also took shape in one of these groups. Other kinds of things that have been talked about, we have a partnership in our 5th grade with a school in Kenya that a couple of our alumni have been very involved with. And the students at our school and the school in Kenya have a reading partnership where the students read books and share book reviews with each other and share books with each other, and it's built around their shared love of reading. And one of the questions that a teacher from the 5th grade brought to her group was the idea of how to infuse more of an enduring relationship between the students into that kind of project. It's only happening for a year. The students live very far apart. Is there a way to take sort of the traditional pen pal model and make that into something more? And a great conversation took place in group as a result of that. And so those have been some really successful projects. With those have come, of course, some challenges. So one of the big ones for us is how to cultivate follow-through. I think that the group conversations are by and large very inspiring to teachers. It's fun to hear your colleagues share their ideas. The discussions are great, and the follow-through is inconsistent. When it's good, it's really good, and there are great ideas that also never quite launch after the group happens. And part of that is this model of you present your project once, but then the next month someone else is presenting a project. So that's something that has been a challenge, but also raises a question of is having that inspiration enough of a starting point? Does there need to be a more structured approach for teachers to follow through on their projects? We're still thinking about that, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Attendance at our meetings is also a challenge. The meetings are scheduled in August and people have them on their calendars, but of course life happens and a parent needs to come in for a conference, or your kid is sick, or any one of the number of thousands of other things. So the groups work best when they are consistent, when it's like the same 4 of us meeting every month and talking. We get to know each other, we get to know each other's work. We make it work no matter what. Everyone who is scheduled to presents to someone. It may not be the group they had originally conceived of, but that's also something that's been a challenge for us. And another one is that in our upper school and middle school, most of the academic classes are taught across a team of 2 to 3 teachers. So like we each might teach a section of 7th grade humanities or a section of AP English 11. Our lower school classes are all there are 2 to 3 classes in each grade level, and they try to stay aligned. So that raises a question of when one person from a teaching team has a really great curriculum